Corona by Paul Celan, translated by Pierre Joly. Autumn eats its leaf out of my hand. We are friends. We shell time from the nuts and teach it to walk. Time returns to the shell. In the mirror is Sunday. In the dream we sleep. The mouth speaks true. My eye goes down to my lover's sex. We gaze at each other. We speak of dark things. We love each other like poppy and memory. We sleep like wine in the seashells, like the sea in the moon's blood beam. We stand and embrace at the window. They watch us from the street. It is time for this to be known. It is time that the stone took the trouble to bloom, that unrest's heart started to beat. It's time for it to be time. It is time. Corona. Aus der Hand frisst der Herbst mir sein Blatt. Wir sind Freunde. Wir schallen die Zeit aus den Nüssen und leeren sie gehen. Die Zeit kehrt zurück in die Schale. Im Spiegel ist Sonntag, im Traum wird geschlafen, der Mund redet wahr. Mein Aug steigt hinab zum Geschlecht der Geliebten. Wir sehen uns an, wir sagen uns Dunkles. Wir lieben einander wie Mond und Gedächtnis. Wir schlafen, wie wehen in den Nüssen, wie das Meer im Blutstrahl des Mundes. Wir stehen umschlungen im Fenster, sie sehen uns zu von der Straße. Es ist Zeit, dass man weiß. Es ist Zeit, dass der Stein sich zu blühen bequemt, dass der Unrast ein Herz schlagt. Es ist Zeit, dass es Zeit wird. Es ist Zeit. So that was Corona by Paul Celan, originally written in German and translated very well. I hope you enjoyed it, although it's pretty dark. I'm going to go through some of my favorite lines and talk about how to read this poem and why it's one of my favorites. Start at the beginning. We shell time from the nuts and teach it to walk. Time returns to the shell. I think this is a pretty bold statement. I mean, time is sort of embedded in physical things in the natural world in this poem. We borrow it for a brief time, we humans, and then it returns. And I think throughout this whole poem, there's kind of this ethic or direction towards embracing freedom. And that was the theme of a lot of Celan's poems. He wrote this poem in the 50s after World War II. And he was born in Europe, in Romania, in 1920. And so he lived through, as a teenager and as a 20, or in his early 20s, he lived through a lot of chaos. Nazis and communists and soldiers from all over the world. This poem and a lot of his poems are kind of about a rebirth. He started writing these and others in the 50s, 60s. So they're about how he conceives of how to live life in the aftermath of this kind of continent-wide trauma and shock. And I think in this poem especially, borrowing time from the natural world and teaching it to walk uh, is a really vivid image. In the mirror is Sunday. In the dream we sleep, the mouth speaks true. So Sunday is obviously the last day of the week, and I think that there's something there, um, that we're reaching the end of a week, and he's hoping that Monday will be a new beginning, as we often do. But there's something unconvincing about that. That even in his dreams, all he does is sleep. His mouth speaks the truth, but there's no new beginning. Monday is not going to be a new um, kind of rebirth of the civilization. This dream, this kind of fog that lies over the area of Europe where he lives. It's unspecified where this narrator is living and what exact year it is, but it's pretty clear because of um, where Celan was living, and at what time he wrote this poem, that it is in the late 1940s or 1950s. My eye goes down to my lover's sex. We gaze at each other. So he's introducing a new character. We heard we before, but we didn't know who the other person in this poem was. So this is a poem about intimacy, and it really takes a turn towards private affection at this point. And also rebirth. Again, the sex of a lover is a place where life can be born again. And we saw that in the nuts, and which are like seeds. They carry seeds with them, the possibility of rebirth. And we'll see that throughout the rest of the poem as well. Lots of imagery of plants and cocoons and wombs and garden kind of imagery. Things are trying to be reborn. They're sitting there. They need to be watered. They need to be fertilized. Not quite yet. There's some pail that's over the whole society or garden that's stopping this rebirth from happening, but it wants to happen, and the material is there for it. We love each other like poppy and memory. That's one of my absolute favorite lines of Celan's, and probably one of my favorite lines in any poem I've ever read. Poppy, of course, is a drug. It's not a kind of hallucinogenic drug. It doesn't make you, it doesn't kind of elongate and crazy things up like acid or marijuana. It has a kind of sedative effect. It kind of draws your mind back into its unconscious from the conscious state. And so saying we love each other as Poppy loves memory is basically what that line is saying. It kind of caresses it and draws it out and lingers on it and makes you dream the whole night with some memory as the kind of root of your dream. It's such a beautiful line, and conjures up. This is a beautiful poem of forms. I mean, the form of a poppy itself, with its long leaves and petals, and the memories. I mean, we all insert, memories that we go back to often when we're meditating or dreaming. We sleep like wine in the seashells. I've never seen wine in a seashell. I imagine it's kind of beautiful. Probably give the shell a kind of reddish or orange tinge, depending on the nature of the wine, like the sea in the moon's blood beam. So again, at night, this whole poem takes place in dreams or at night. You can imagine a sea, a moon above it, reflecting off the surface, and this one of those red streaks either in the sunset or um, on the surface of the ocean. They watch us from the street. We stand and embrace at the window. They watch us from the street. Who is they? It's never specified. I think it's the people. I think it's the rest of the civilization who are watching two lovers in the window of a room. And there's something kind of submerged. I mean, the civilization is in shock or in trauma after all the violence and destruction that's happened. It certainly seems like that. And his next line is, "It is time for this to be known." And that's the one line with an exclamation point at the end. So he means it. I think that really is kind of the core of this poem. This wanting a rebirth. This wanting others to know that you found love, that you know what you want to do with your life, even after all this, that you want to consummate something, you want a relationship, you want to use the time you have to see beautiful things being born. It is time that the stone took the trouble to bloom. A stone is such a compact, gray, packed in thing through eons of time and geological processes. I mean, it's not a fertile thing, we would think of it. It's not like a flower bud. But the stone needs to take the trouble to bloom. There can be a flower that grows even out of this stone. That unrest heart started to beat. That could be about one individual heart, or it could be about an entire country or civilization or continent who has unrest within them, but it hasn't started to dictate their actions. They're still asleep, but they want to wake up. They want to do something. They want to form something new. It is time for it to be time. It is time. So I think this poem, the economy of language in this poem, this is true of many great poems where you have these lines that can sum up the entire kind of state that somebody lives their entire life in. And a great poet can do it in 3 words. It is time. And of course, the words only mean something because of what's come prior to them. But I think this poem works as a reflection on an individual who wants to restart his or her life again. And it also works on a civilizational level, on the broadest scale that you want to talk about and think about, where everybody is kind of in this trance and there's a pale of fear or silence or the aftermath of something that hangs over a whole city, a whole country, a whole continent. It's time for it to be time. It is time to start to live again. And again, just think about how many words throughout the poem have to do with fertility and growth and rebirth. A leaf, the nuts, the shell. The nuts hold seeds in them, of course, to carry the future of the species of plant, or um, to my lover's sex. That's an organ of rebirth. Poppy, seashells, bloom, heart. There are so many words, images, concepts in the poem that all have the potential to generate new life and to continue on a cycle. And it's been interrupted by this kind of destruction. But just seeing two lovers in the window might awaken everybody again. So it's one of my favorite poems by Paul Celan, and I think one of the most economical and beautiful poems ever written, honestly. I'd recommend reading all of Paul Celan's poems. You can go online, look them up or buy a collected works of his. And I'll be covering more of his poems, Paul Celan, as I go along. So hope you enjoyed this.